Some shows lean left, some lean right, but we lean local and business. This is North Georgia Business RadioX with Beau Henderson. For the next hour, we will celebrate the businesses in our area and the people that run them. Find us on Facebook at North Georgia Business RadioX and online at northgeorgiabusinessradiox.com. Now, here's Beau Henderson.
One of the things I was thinking about as I was coming to the show today was money memories. And I thought it'd be a good question to start the show off with. What is our earliest money memory? I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton and Carl Lubbe, and I'm excited to introduce a guest that's going to talk about money, banking, and some things right here in our community. But before we get into that, Bill, I'll start with you. Do you have an early money memory?
Yes, I remember one of the most surprising and appreciated raises that I ever got as an employee. As a kid, I was working in a grocery store. And I think I got tears in my eyes when the manager came to me and said, Bill, you've been doing a real good job, and we're going to raise you from 35 cents an hour to 50 cents an hour.
Whoa.
I thought I'd hit the lottery.
I'll take that percent increase any day.
I would too.
Not bad. All right, Carl, do you have one comes to mind?
I do. And actually, for the listeners who don't know me, I was born and raised in South Africa and then lived in Central Africa for a while in a country called Zaire then. And when we first came to the States, I remember my dad going to the bank in Zaire and exchanging money, the Zairean franc or whatever the currency was at the time. I was 8, I don't know, and getting American dollars. And I remember sitting in my room because he said, okay, you've got, $20 to spend when we go to the States, because we went to Dollywood, because where else would you go in the U.S. when you came here? And I remember sitting there in my bedroom, and the smell of the money still, right now, I can remember what I was wearing and what the bedroom looked like, because it created such a, a neurologist would call it a limbic attachment to that experience of going, I'd never seen this president before. I'd never seen money that only came in one color, because all of our money in both South Africa and Zaire came in different colors and different shapes and sizes. So to see a rectangular green bill that you'd seen in the movies in person was my kind of first money memory.
Very cool memory. That's so amazing how like a very emotional experience connects and attaches like that.
Yeah.
You remember the sights, the smells.
Limbic attachment.
There you go.
That's what that's called.
Got that? That's our word for the day.
Limbic attachment.
Well, I want to ask about a money memory from our guest, but before we do that, Bill, why don't you introduce him?
Yes, I'm delighted to introduce Mike Allen, Director of Real Estate Credit Risk at Cadence Bank. Mike and I are not strangers to each other. In fact, we were talking a few minutes ago when Mike was a very young rising banker in Macon, Georgia. I was vice president of Georgia College in Milledgeville. And Mike became a part of our young alumni group. So we met when Mike would come to those meetings. And once we found out he played golf, so he and I played the Milledgeville Country Club. I moved to Gainesville in 1988. And a year and a half later, I looked in the paper, and Mike Allen had come here to be with what was then First National Bank. He's had a sterling career in banking, no pun intended. Mike has become very distinguished as a prominent banker, and as we'll probably talk about a little bit, he's even been an instructor in the LSU School of Banking.
Oh, wow.
Mike, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. Did something come to mind, Mike, when I said an early money memory?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As a child growing up in a rural part of Middle Georgia, my first job was cutting grass for neighbors, and I found out quickly I liked the money.
Right.
A little bit of money I earned.
That's nice. Yeah. So seeing, hey, there's an exchange for this. Well, I'm wondering, as you're mowing grass, did you say, hey, I want to be a banker one day? Or how did that path come to be? What made that connection for you to go into banking?
Well, no connection to mowing grass, but I got into the banking business really almost by default, actually. My first job out of college, I'd done an internship in college with an agri-products company, and I had an opportunity as a newlywed, been married 2 months, to move to Tampa, Florida with this same agri-products company. It didn't work out real well because literally 4 days after I moved into, and we moved into our apartment, the regional president came down and announced they were closing that facility.
Oh, wow.
So it was a pretty bad experience for me, but turned out to be great. We moved back to Macon after our short stint in Tampa, and my father-in-law was in banking at the time, And of course, coming off of that experience, I was looking for something with great stability. So he talked to me about banking, and that's how I got into it.
You're listening to North Georgia Business RadioX. I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton and Carl Lubbe. Our guest is Mike Allen with Cadence Bank. And Mike, I'm curious. So tell us a little bit about Cadence Bank and that name. It's a little bit different name.
It is a different. Can you hear me?
Yep.
It is a different name. If you look up the word cadence in the dictionary, what you see is it has the word always will be used the word rhythm. So it's like a drum beat, and what we like to think of that is that our bank and our employees and our professionals are in sync or in rhythm with our customers and their businesses. Our company was formed in 2009 in Houston, Texas. And in 2019, Cadence bought a banking company I was with, State Bank at the time, here, and we had a location here in Gainesville. So by way of merger in 2019, I became a partner with Cadence Bank.
Very good.
Fascinating. So, Mike, for you, if somebody, if you were talking to that young man who's about to move to Tampa and go, hey, I don't know that this is a great move, and you're trying to sell him on the idea of banking, but make the year 2021, what would you say is the most surprising thing maybe people don't know about what it is you're doing day to day in the world of banking?
Well, I think most of the public really views banks as a place where they deposit their money and they borrow money, right? Take out loans. So pretty much banking 101, but there's so many moving parts and disciplines in the business that happen behind the scenes to make that client-facing experience good.
Yeah. And would there be a way to elaborate kind of even one thing in your day-to-day that maybe your clients and customers don't know, this is something we're doing to make your experience better?
Well, as Bill mentioned in the introduction, my role is I'm in charge of all real estate risk for Georgia, essentially, commercial and home builder finance. And I have a great team of bankers and underwriters that working with me and assess the risk profile of each and every opportunity we have to lend money to. There's a lot that goes into that, a lot of detail, a lot of number crunching. But at the end of the day, we really view our relationship as a partnership with our clients because, we are their financial advisor in some respects. And, we don't want to make a bad decision that's going to put their business and them individually in jeopardy, and lend them money that, they can't pay back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, having met you so many years ago when you were just starting out in banking, and I didn't know the Tampa 4-day stay, but having met you, I have enjoyed watching your progress professionally, and of course you've had great progress to my dismay on the golf course while mine was going backwards. But thinking about the progress in your profession, I mentioned in the introduction, the LSU School of Banking, I can still remember quite a few years ago when you started attending, but then it has become a spot where you've had a leadership with fellow professional bankers. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, well, Bill, I've been leading and teaching seminars and webinars for the Georgia Bankers Association for a number of years, probably 35 years. I was actually referred to the director of the school at LSU probably 15 years ago. And I started teaching there, and I think this will be my 15th year. And I love the school, and I've gotten involved with it and had an opportunity to come on board the executive committee as the incoming president of the school. That's a 6-year commitment, essentially. But, teaching for me is a passion of mine because it's a way for me to give back to the industry and training young bankers and young professionals, in various topics and various disciplines. But I really enjoy my affiliation with LSU.
How has COVID affected that?
Well, it dramatically affected us in 2020, as you might imagine. I mean, we had to end up postponing the session, suspending the session, and which was both expensive and disappointing because, we enjoy our time there on campus in Baton Rouge, with the students. We are planning for a session in 2021. It's either going to be in person or virtual or a combination of both.
So we're talking, so we're getting education, we're getting real estate credit risk. I want to learn more about that, but we got to go to a break. I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton, Carl Lubbe, talking with Mike Allen. Got a real estate question when we come back.
Sure.
So we're talking about good work with the educating young bankers that Mike's been doing. But before we went to the break, I wanted to ask a specific question, and let's get into that now. I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton, Carl Lubbe. We're talking to Mike Allen with Cadence Bank. So just to let us, that casual listener that might not have banking in their background, no finance degree, just say, what do you mean when you're doing real estate credit risk? What's going on there?
Sure. So essentially, our calling officers, our salespeople, if you will, they are making contact with customers, uncovering loan opportunities. When they discover a loan opportunity to finance a project, that project then details are given to members of my team, financial statements, company, personal financial statements, projections, etc. My team takes that information and dissects it and underwrites it. And it ultimately assesses the risk profile in the request as to if it's a doable deal or it's not a doable deal. So we really are underwriting credit risk.
Well, and let's talk about the importance of that, right? It might seem like, oh, why don't they just let everything go through? They're not making my job easy. But talk about the importance of having good a portfolio on the books of these loans.
Well, sure. Asset quality is extremely important for all banks, and the performance of the portfolio determines ultimately the bank's profitability and the return to its shareholders at the end of the day. And so banks are interested in putting quality loans on the books. As the old saying goes, we lend cash and we want to get repaid with cash. Some would say we rent the money, but it's all about the quality of the loan performance.
So for me, Mike, one of the things I'm always talking about is I run a brand agency. And so one of the questions we're always asking is, I love already the idea and the sound of Cadence and establishing a rhythm and how easy and approachable a brand that is to the community. For you working for a company like this for as long as you have, what is it that separates your brand? And what I mean by that is brand is always answering two questions: who we think we are and who the people think we are. And so the people are always asking that question based on the problem that you're solving for them. So what is it that Cadence Bank particularly, what's the problem that you feel that you're solving uniquely that maybe other banks don't solve in perhaps the same way?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's really our people, our banking professionals. A president I worked for early in my career, explained it this way, every bank's money is the same color. What differentiates banks in the marketplace is the level of service and professionalism with which that service is delivered by its people. So it really revolves around people and the quality of the people that differentiates and helps us enables us to be more competitive, in the marketplace.
I think, Mike, from my vantage point, just as an ordinary layman who doesn't have the economic training that you do or other professional bankers do, I would echo what you're saying. To me, the numbers are not what decide for me whether I'm going to be with a particular bank or not. It's how I'm treated when I go there.
Yeah, in our own community here, I've seen a lot of growth in Gainesville and Hall County since 1989 when I came here and moved my family here. But most all of our listeners out there, I'm sure, have their own personal experience with a bank, and they do business with a person, not a bank, in most cases. So it's a very personal decision, as to where a person or their company chooses to do business.
Goes back to relationships, comes up over and over
exactly.
again.
One of the things I've noted in some banks, and I don't know, Mike, if this is a trend or not, but as our society has grown more informal as far as their appearance is concerned, I've noticed there are banks that have gotten in on that too. There was a time when you were starting out in banking, I'm sure you had a three-piece suit, and that was you probably better have several of them. And the coat and tie part may have seemed a little bit stilted to customers, especially as people don't wear coat and tie at a church anymore or many other events. So even that has been a change to accommodate the way society is.
That's true. I probably have 12 or 15 of those suits still hanging in my closet, but I don't remember the last time I wore a tie. To your point, our clients are much more casual today with their approach to day in and day out being in an office or on a job site. And so, yeah, I think banks and bankers have adopted a more casual approach to interacting, and the relationships they have with their clients is just people are more comfortable.
And 30 years ago, banks were looked upon as very austere institutions. That's not the case now.
Correct. Agreed.
Yeah, speaking of that, so my father-in-law who lives in Sandy Springs, I'd never experienced this with the local community bank, but he has a long 20-year relationship. And so I have a 5 and a 7-year-old. And so even when they were younger, on Saturday, we'd go down to visit Chuck, Daddy, and me. That's the names for their grandparents. And he would take them to the bank. That was a trip. That was a Saturday morning outing because he needed to go either make a deposit or do something, and he wanted to put a little money in their account. And now the bank account, I mean, it felt like there was chocolate chip cookies and there was like a toy place and they got a free lion. I was like, that is not the bank of my childhood. When I went in with my father to the bank 25 years ago, it was like, you are to be seen and not heard.
That's right.
You know?
Well, let's get back a little bit to those programs. I think that's fascinating, the work you're doing in the education. Anything specific about the programs that you wanted to bring up?
Well, the LSU program, for example, is a 3-year program for bankers. And the way it works is you have 2 weeks on campus and then you have home study problems. You come back the next year for 2 more weeks on campus, another set of home study problems. And then the final year, your senior year, is 2 weeks on campus where the main exercise is you're grouped together with 6 or 8 folks and you actually run a simulated bank for that week. And it's graded. It's graded by experienced instructors as well as regulatory agency representatives are part of that assessment and grading team as well. And
coming through that program, having that on the resume, is that a booster to maybe take a step?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, generally, what I like to say to banks that I'm recruiting to send folks to the school is pick your superstar, pick your up and coming and rising superstar that you see as being future leadership of your bank. Send them to this program because they're going to get really, really quality training across all disciplines of the business.
And for you, as you're talking to those bankers and future bankers, what would you say are some of the marks of that superstar? So maybe if I'm listening to this and I'm in an industry and I'm wanting to develop the characteristics of a superstar, or I'm trying to grow my next level leadership and it's going, oh, it's this one or that one soft skill. Once I start to really see that, it's going to give me a key indicator that this is somebody worth investing in.
Well, I think the person has to have great interpersonal skills and good listening skills, good communication skills, I'll say. And they, if you're on the sales front, you got to meet people well, you got to present yourself well, you got to have great communication skills. And, those I think are really key. And as you progress up the corporate ladder, so to speak, having an acumen and an understanding of what makes the bank tick, both from a sales perspective and a backroom operational perspective, and be balanced. And what I mean by that essentially is, you have a balance for being an advocate for your client, but at the same time, we're in the risk business. So you need to have an understanding and an appreciation for the risk present in the relationship.
All right, I'm going to throw you a curveball, Mike. I've been waiting the whole time for this. So I know you've golfed for a long time. Bill's filled me in. So if you could give a parallel between success with golf and success in business.
Yeah.
What you got?
Well, no, it's a great question. And I do actually use an analogy oftentimes to that question. I think of credit requests that come before me and my team to underwrite almost as a tee shot. You're standing on the tee and you take the swing and the golf ball is going to end up somewhere. It's either going to end up in the knee-deep rough or could end up in the middle of the fairway or somewhere in between. And in order for deals to be bankable, our job is to assess and underwrite that risk. And if it's leaning on the rough, the ball, our job is to move that tee shot back closer to the middle of the fairway and make it a more bankable risk profile for the bank.
Yeah, hey, I love it. I love the analogies. Always ties it together. We've been talking to Mike Allen with Cadence Bank right off of Jesse Jewell Parkway, guys, right in town. I'm Beau Henderson. You've been here with Dr. Bill Lampton, Carl Lubbe. Appreciate the conversation, Mike. Hope you'll come back and see us before long.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you right after the news break. We'll be talking with estate planning attorney Mike Hinton right after this. We are going from talking about a certain kind of risk that Mike shared with us. Now we're going to go to another kind of risk that we can avoid, and we're talking about avoiding probate and all the things we need to do for estate planning. And it's another Mike. We're talking to Mike Hinton. I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton and Carl Lubbe. In our today's show, what I really made it, I started thinking about, when did risk become real to me? And it was when I had a daughter. And I know both of you guys have daughters, and daughter and a son for you, Carl.
Yes, sir.
Did that give you a different perspective about risk and how things pan out?
Well, again, I think you might have the same experience. I was slow to the risk brain, but my wife was very quick to it.
She was attuned.
Absolutely. And so one of the first things we did was start assessing our estate and our, risk and our liabilities. And she started thinking about, what does this look like if, because I tend to travel quite a bit, and my wife has joked that I'm on my 8th of 9 lives of some of the risks that I'm taking. So she was very acutely aware.
I do notice she's keeping count.
She is. She's very meticulous, which makes her great at risk analysis.
Bill, what about you? How about daughters? Did it make you think any more about risk? What if something happened to you? Maybe when they were younger, or maybe now. I don't know.
One of the points I would make is that many of us don't think quickly enough or soon enough about that. Mm-hmm. We have reasons that we should with our families and with whatever assets we have, but it's always tomorrow. It's always next week. I'll get around to that.
One of the things in the retirement planning business, what I see all the time, is people say, I know it's important. I know we need to do this. We're going to do this. We should do this. But so often it's a reactive situation to where it's addressed after something's happened. Mm-hmm. But we all need to do it up front when everything's calm and we can think straight and everything's still in front of us and we're not in this vulnerable situation. So I'm excited to be talking to Mike Hinton, a local probate attorney here right in downtown Gainesville. Mike, welcome to North Georgia Business RadioX.
Thank you, Beau. Glad to be here.
Right off the bat, one of the things when we're doing the comprehensive retirement plan, we get to estate planning. And I'm glad you're here on the show to dig into this, because I do tell people in Georgia, at least as a baseline, we need a couple of documents. We need 3 that I know of, and I know you can dig into that a little bit for us.
Correct. You can't eliminate all the risk in estate planning, but you can minimize it by making good plans. There's 3 documents that everyone should have. The first one is a will, prepared by an attorney, because there's certain legal requirements, and that can eliminate a lot of confusion for whoever's in charge of the estate. The next one is a financial power of attorney, which would become durable in case you're ever incapacitated, heaven forbid, through dementia or car accident or anything. And the last one would be the Georgia Advanced Directive for Health Care, to where you have a healthcare agent involved who can make healthcare decisions, and it also deals with end-of-life issues as well. So a will, financial power of attorney, and a healthcare directive are more important now during this pandemic we're having than anything else.
Things we're seeing now. So just I think to make it clear for somebody that this isn't what they're doing or that what they deal with a lot, is let's give examples of each of those documents. So if we don't have a properly put together executed will in place, what could happen? What's the danger there?
Well, the transfer of your assets at death could go to individuals you didn't want to happen, or the powers that could be given in a properly executed will with conveying property, eliminating having to file inventories with the probate court. It eliminates a lot of red tape. And without the will, it would be you die intestate, and that means that the law would be the default, the probate law, and it would go through a certain pecking order where if you had a surviving spouse, it would go to that one, or children. And it's better if you have second marriages to plan for specific individuals in the will. So you're at the mercy, I guess, of the state of Georgia if you don't have specific plans in place.
And sorry, Mike, for those of us who have gone through it, I know it's a lot less painful than I imagined it would be, like setting up the will and going through that. But for somebody who hasn't done it before and we're trying to educate them and bring some value to them, what would you say is the most common misconception about setting up a will?
Misconception.
And maybe it's just the time involved. So on average, if you were to sit down with a professional like yourself, how much work are they having to do just to walk through the will?
They would need to find someone that they would need to first find out someone they would trust that they could appoint that could handle their financial matters, that have knowledge about what they have and what they don't have. Titling of property, that would be another thing. I'd need to know how the property's titled. And then then it would drop down to personal property, automobiles, anything. You'd have to transfer that over. Mm-hmm. So it can be time consuming for an individual unless they have a clear-cut plan. And then there's all sorts of professionals that would have to get involved, even if there was a will. I mean, accountants or real estate professionals.
Mm-hmm. But like you were saying, Dr. Bill, I think the interesting thing is, having gone through this not too long ago with my wife, having the planning portion of it, I was surprised at how many professionals there were that you could be resourced to be helpful with this. And it wasn't this ambiguous, wide thing. It's like, hey, bring us these 5 to 6 documents and we'll just get started. Kind of the old analogy of you don't eat an elephant all at one time. You got to start with one bite, right?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming for someone who hasn't gone through it. Mm-hmm. I mean, first there's upon death, you have, of course, the death certificate you'd have to present, and then you'd have to set up a banking account for the estate, which is like a corporation, and then creditors, they would have to be notified in case they had any claims, and there's time limits that go through the probate court. And the probate court clerks, they can't give legal advice. They can hand you the forms, but if you say, what do I put there? I mean, it's the unauthorized practice of law, so they're limited in what they can help you do. We're
digging into estate planning with Mike Hinton. I'm Beau Henderson here with Carl Lubbe and Dr. Bill Lampton. You're listening to North Georgia Business RadioX. So we've been talking some about the will, and Bill, I think you had a question.
Yes, one of the things that we haven't brought out yet, Mike, is the fact that taking care of these items, and I've been through all 3 of them, and I know that taking care of them can prevent so many family disputes, arguments over what grandmother really intended or what mother intended. If you have it in writing, there should be no room then for saying it was supposed to be this way.
You're right, Bill. It should be that way. But a lot of the times it's not, because someone will say, Daddy told me before he died it shall be divided this way. Mm-hmm. Well, Daddy has a legally drafted will, and it said he wanted it done another way. Then you have a situation of the estate litigation with the probate. A lot of times it's lack of capacity of the individual. That's what somebody argues with an objection or caveat. Or you have 2 wills. You have one that was done 10 years ago and then one that was done a year ago when grandma didn't quite have capacity. So then you're in court.
Yes, even though it's not foolproof, though, it improves your chances.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You have a legal document that speaks beyond the grave.
And let's we talked about, we're digging into the will some. Let's talk about those 2 power of attorneys, too. What might some of the bad things that happen if we don't get those in place?
Well, the bad things that could happen is that the 2 things go hand in hand. You've got the financial power of attorney that becomes durable, and that deals with mainly getting access to mom's checking account and paying car payments, and critically her supplemental health care insurance. I mean, if she's having cancer or something. So the financial power of attorney is critical. It has limitations. I mean, they can't draft a new will for you or transfer certain types of assets. And then so the financial power of attorney is critical, and then you have the Georgia Advanced Directive for Healthcare. That goes into what type of health care they get, if they need assisted living or a nursing home. And then also and you have an agent, a healthcare agent, then you have a backup agent. And then in 2017, the Georgia legislature revamped both of the healthcare documents. The Advanced Directive for Healthcare included palliative issues, which I usually get out of the way first, because that's end-of-life issues. You have essentially several choices about respirators, life support, or it's usually let my natural death occur or some variation thereof, hydration, nutrition. So it's
very good. So it can help us with a lot of things to have these documents properly in place.
Exactly, a good plan.
I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton, Carl Lubbe. We've been talking to Mike Hinton, estate planning attorney right here in Gainesville, Georgia. And I got a couple more questions when we come back, right here on North Georgia's Business RadioX. taking time now, kind of a hard easy. Let's do a little bit of hard work now to make things easier in the future. That's what estate planning is. That's what's getting these documents in place. It's what it's all about. I'm Beau Henderson here with Dr. Bill Lampton and Carl Lubbe and estate planning probate attorney Mike Hinton. And Mike, we talked about the 3 core docs we need. And you were telling me there were some challenges and some work you're doing with guardianships and conservatorships that we might need to discuss.
That's correct, Beau. A lot of times in our family, we'll have loved ones who can't make decisions legally, usually due with dementia. So the family members, in order to place them in a either nursing home or assisted living, they'll need the authority to do that. And a court order through a petition for guardianship, which deals with their health care, and a petition for conservatorship, which deals with their finances, is what you have to go through. You would have to petition the probate court for the guardianship and conservatorship. You would have to, there'd be an evaluation. The courts have their own evaluator, licensed clinical social worker, and they'll say, yes, this individual does need a guardianship or conservatorship, or no, they do not. You'll present evidence at court, which courts now with the COVID, they're doing a good job, I think, through technology. The hearings are through Zoom, and it seems to be working out. There's a giant screen, and you have your witnesses in little bitty boxes, and the judge can prompt witnesses, or she can mute them if she likes. So it's a process, but once you get those documents, the letters of guardianship and conservatorship, you can present them to banks, you can present them to retirement accounts, and you can get access to help that loved one.
Very good. And there are some challenges now, though. You're saying there's some challenges with what COVID's presented with, especially some of the living facilities. Right.
Right now, this is a novel, the COVID-19. In order to go through the legal steps, you first have to serve the individual, even if they don't understand what legal papers you're giving them. Okay. The law requires you have to serve them personally. And many times there's confusion about personal care homes, nursing homes, rehab facilities, allowing court individuals to serve these documents upon the ward, we'll call them proposed ward. So there's confusion about Hipaa, which that word's thrown out a lot. But Hipaa, there are like 7 different exceptions to Hipaa. One is a court order. One is emergency circumstances. But the administrators at these facilities, they don't understand. I've even had to get law enforcement to show up to serve them the papers. And they say, no, you can't come in here. So what do you do? So there's some creative solutions. You could appoint an administrator as a special process server and do it that way. Or recently I met the family for a family visit, and I'm, cousin Mike, and I'll give them the paperwork. Right. And that's service.
So you have to be creative there.
Yeah.
Wow. So for you in this last season, obviously COVID has changed almost everything. And I think you were talking about the technology improvement and then also this obviously HIPAA-related service. Are there things going forward, because I think our world is probably forever changed, right? Mm-hmm. That people may not yet be thinking about, hey, as you're thinking about your estate planning, as you're thinking about this for both yourself and for other people, here's some things that now have changed, maybe for the better, kind of going forward and actually help in that space.
Oh, yes.
Oh, great.
And this is like personal. This hits really close to home. I mean, my mother's in the hospital now. She's got some issues. And the only way I can get access to her is calling the nurses station, and they'll give me a recent update. I'm listed as the emergency contact, but I hate to say it, being an estate planning attorney, she never got these documents, even though I tried to get her to get these documents. So that would list me and somebody else as a backup. So, and you can't go into hospital. She's in Augusta. You can't get access to the hospital there. I think here you could have one person go in, but you're in the dark. And having these documents gives you some peace of mind, knowing that they will call you, the medical professionals, to get your input, and you can get different specialists. So it's critical now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Bill?
Well, one of the things, have we really talked about probate enough, what that means?
All right. We can talk about that all you want to, because that's what I do all day.
That's your deal. Well, a question I had, Mike, is say we're there. Say the preventative stuff maybe wasn't done, and we're dealing with probate. Is that something I could call you, Mike, and say, hey, this sounds scary and daunting. Can you help me through this process now that we're going to have to do this?
Absolutely. I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a good bit. The first thing I say is, they're going through a tragedy, so I give my condolences and understand that it's going to be stressful. And the first thing they'll need would be the death certificate. And once they have the death certificate, then they come to me and I'll ask what the individual had in terms of real property. And then one of the issues I'm dealing with now a lot is ownership of property between a husband and wife. Mm. It could be, if it has survivorship, I'm good. If it just says joint tenants are in one person's name, then I have to go through the issue of doing some real property law as well, deeds that you transfer. So then I would look at the property, see what kind of difficulties I want to have there, then tell the individual there's a process. 6 months, you have to keep the estate open. You'll have to open an estate account. Then notice to debtors and creditors. If there's any heirs, there could be heirs that they haven't seen, that they have a right to object. And I've had them in Texas and Vietnam recently. Well,
it makes it complicated.
Yeah. So, and then once you've done everything that the probate court requires, then you'll, and as far as transferring real property, I say wait until the very end of the 6 months, because if there's any claims placed on the property, you want that done closer to the end. So you can tell the court, yes, I've done everything I was supposed to do. Let me be discharged. Let me disperse the money, and the individual who passed away, their wishes will be carried out.
I've got as we're going through this, this isn't, you having to be an expert in real estate law. This is some depth to all everything you handle uncovers another thing and another thing, especially when
deeply
you get
complex
to some of these family matters and the real estate and the way things are titled. So somebody out there listening, I'm curious, I don't know if this was a first career or what made Mike say, you know what, I want to do probate. I want to do estate law.
Oh, okay.
He lost a bet. I feel like that's where the story's going.
I figured you were going to ask me something like this.
Yeah.
I got a degree in finance. Uh-huh. I wasn't good with math, even though I was in finance.
Right.
Worked in banking for about 8 or 10 years.
I saw that you did.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then banks were getting gobbled up left and right. Smaller ones were getting taken over. So I wanted to have some more control over what I did.
Right.
So I saw elderly people having difficulty figuring things out in banks. Mom would put stuff in the mailbox. Yeah. So then I decided, one, to have more control over my employment, and in the law, you can pretty much reinvent yourself depending on what the economy does. And as far as helping the elderly people, it seems that's a segment of society that was had fallen through the cracks.
No, that's a good story. When we look for background stories, sometimes it's just randomly happened, but you saw a need.
Yeah.
You saw a group that needed some help, and then you saw, okay, I can do this independently. So I love that story. How long you been working on this specifically?
About 8 years.
Okay, I was going to say, I know you've been doing it a while. When it comes to the listener out there, and okay, I at least need to get my basic documents in place, Mike. I hear what you're saying. I know it needs to be done. When I hear that come up, and this might not surprise you, I bet it won't. I probably sit down with 200 households a year, and I would say 90% of the time, either those estate planning documents aren't there or they're outdated. It's the rule, not the exception. So for the person, but everybody says, I know it needs to be done, right? So for the person out there listening, do you package, say, okay, I'll get you your 3 basic documents taken care of in kind of a package? I know it depends on the complexity on the charge and things, but you kind of say, hey, let's come in, let's get your whole package taken care of and get you where you need to be.
I do, Beau. It's called the bundle.
The bundle. I like it. It's got a trademark.
Yeah, you can get I said, we'll do it a la carte and have a specific price for that.
Right.
Or you could get everything together since I have all the documents and, I'll do it for this price.
Good. I like that. That's what I like to be able to refer and say, hey, get your bundle.
Yeah.
And at least we know our bases are covered. So, Mike, thanks so much for the work you do. Very important work.
Yes.
I see it firsthand from where I sit. Somebody says, I need the bundle, right?
Right.
How do they get in touch with you? I know you're downtown Gainesville, but website, phone, what do you think?
I have a website, Mike Hinton Law. I'm right off the square near Atlas Pizza. You know that.
Oh, the best. The
Yeah,
best.
I'm within a 5-minute walk to the probate court. So check out my website and give me a call.
All right, guys, this is something we all need to take care of. Carl will come see you just to go to Atlas. I promise.
That's right. I will. I'll be over there.
All right.
So we've learned a lot. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a good one. I'm Beau Henderson, Bill Lampton, Carl Lubbe here on North Georgia Business RadioX. See you next week.
You've been listening to North Georgia Business RadioX with Beau Henderson. What local business do you know that should be highlighted on our program? Let us know. Just search North Georgia Business RadioX on Facebook or contact Beau at businessradiox.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time. And remember to support our local businesses.